thousands of Russians were forced to evacuate after the second bomb was discovered in Belgrade. Newsweek ran an article titled "Thousands of Russians Evacuated After Second Bomb Found in Belgrade," which means thousands of Russians were forced to evacuate after a second bomb was discovered in Belgrade. Thousands of residents were evacuated after a second bomb that failed to explode was found in the Russian city of Belgrade on Saturday near the site where another bomb fell late on Thursday. Belgrade Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said 3,000 residents in 17 apartment buildings were evacuated in the area after the bomb, which Gladkov and Russian news agency TASS called an explosive object, was found at the site of the incident. The first explosion occurred late on Thursday. Additional information on the emergency at 15 Shalindin Road. The commando found an explosive object. The explosives technicians of the Russian Ministry of Defense decided to disarm it at long range. The executive command decided to evacuate 17 apartment buildings within a radius of 200 m. According to preliminary data, the number is more than 3,000 people, Gladkov wrote on Saturday. For safety's sake, we're taking people to makeshift shelters where everything you need, from drinking water to hot meals, is available. All the houses that we will clear residents will be protected by the police. While still in Russian airspace, the pilot launched 500 kilograms bombs towards the border with Ukraine. Those bombs are GPS-guided bombs that will fly over Ukraine to attack the city of Kharkiv or the Sumy region of Ukraine. It is possible that Russia's GPS navigation system malfunctioned, so these bombs, instead of flying over Ukraine, turned back to hit the central part of the city, which is considered a nightlife. The explosive power of these bombs was so powerful that it knocked a car parked at a traffic intersection onto the roof of a high-rise building. The explosive power of one of these bombs also carved a deep hole with a radius of about 20 meters on the road. This second bomb probably also fell on Thursday night. A video posted to Twitter by Anton Gashenko, an advisor to Ukraine's interior minister, shows Russian law enforcement on the ground reacting at the site where the second bomb was found. The video also shows clogged roads and cars stuck in traffic. "Looks like the Russians have started to counterattack themselves," he wrote on Twitter on Saturday. Other social media users who have posted videos and photos of the situation in Belgrade have criticized the Russian military's performance in the ongoing war in Ukraine, where the battle between Ukrainian and Russian troops spans the cities. Major cities, including Kyiv, Kherson, Odessa and Bakhmut. Meanwhile, Western nations have provided military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine to help the war-torn nation defeat Moscow. The level of incompetence of the Russian military is simply astounding. Another huge bomb was found in downtown Belgrade, population 400,000. Bombed by Russian Air Force jets. Belgrade has a population of 413,000 in 2023, according to macro trends, up 0.72% from last year. Meanwhile, another Twitter user wrote, "They are moving 3,000 Russians because a Russian plane dropped another bomb, but they will claim Ukraine bombed Belgrade for 8 days and 3,000 Russians disappeared." Lost? Belgrade has been rocked by mysterious explosions and fires during Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, with local authorities regularly reporting on unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs for short, in the area. This past January, a Russian sergeant detonated a grenade at his unit in the Korochansky district of the Belgrade region to make a splash, causing an explosion that killed 3 soldiers and injured 16 others. Russian emergency services told state news agency Interfax that the sergeant had accidentally detonated a hand grenade, causing the bullet to explode and catch fire. Newsweek has emailed the Russian Defense Ministry for comment. 2. Russian Air Force resumes bombing raids on civilians in northern Ukraine. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Sunday morning, April 23, Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said that the Russian Air Force had resumed bombings of civilians in northern Ukraine. In the Chernihiv region, on the night of April 22, an explosion was recorded near the village of Orlikivka. She said, "Last night, Russian aircraft again hit the border area of the Chernihiv region with a guided bomb. Around 1:35 a.m., an explosion caused by a guided bomb launched from an enemy Su-35 was recorded in the vicinity of the village of Orlikivka. There were no reports of local casualties or damage to civilian infrastructure." Russian bombers have temporarily halted their nightly bombing of northern Ukraine after a Russian pilot in a Su-34 bombed a Russian city in the middle of the city late at night Thursday prepares to Friday. While still in Russian airspace, he launched bombs weighing up to 500 kilograms towards the border with Ukraine. Those bombs are GPS-guided bombs that will fly over Ukraine to attack the city of Kharkiv or the Sumy region of Ukraine. It is possible that Russia's GPS navigation system malfunctioned, so these bombs, instead of flying over Ukraine, turned back to hit the central part of the city, which is considered a nightlife. The explosive power of these bombs was so powerful that it knocked a car parked at a traffic intersection onto the roof of a high-rise building. The explosive power of one of these bombs also carved a deep hole with a radius of about 20 meters on the road. After this terrible accident, Russia temporarily stopped bombing the territory of Ukraine, but only for a few days. According to Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar, earlier, on April 21, the Russian army shelled the outskirts of Leonivka, Chernihiv region with mortars and artillery. 34 shots were recorded. Regarding the military situation, she said the situation in the cities of Avdiivka and Marinka in eastern Ukraine remains very difficult. Ukrainian troops must constantly resist Russian attacks. The shelling did not stop around the clock there, but thanks to the good work of our artillery, none of the enemy attacks succeeded. The Russian invaders attacked Ukrainian positions 24 times in the region in the past day. All attacks were unsuccessful, and every time the Russian army had to retreat, leaving behind dead comrades. According to Deputy Minister Hanna Maliar, Russia has recently carried out fewer attacks on the third town, Vuhledar, located further southwest of Marinka. Avdiivka, home to a large metallurgical plant, was devastated by fighting for months. According to local officials, the town was largely destroyed, although about 1,800 civilians remained in the town despite efforts to persuade them to leave. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Avdiivka during his trip on Tuesday to the frontline region. The town was surrounded by Russian troops from three sides, but Ukrainian forces still controlled the roads to the west. In the previous 24 hours, 680 Russian soldiers had been eliminated from the battle along with 4 tanks, 4 armored vehicles, 5 artillery systems, 4 air defense systems, and 5 troop and fuel transport vehicles. Overall, from February 24, 2022 to April 22, about 185,730 Russian servicemen were eliminated from the battle. The Ukrainian army destroyed 3,672 Russian tanks, 7,130 armored vehicles, 2,832 artillery systems, 539 mass launch missile systems, 289 air defense systems, 308 aircraft, 293 helicopters, 2,398 aircraft. Tactical combat pilot, 911 cruise missiles, 18 warships, 5,718 troop and fuel transport vehicles, 337 special equipment units. 3. The Baltic states were angry when the Chinese ambassador to France questioned the sovereignty of the countries that were once part of the Soviet bloc. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania have demanded answers from Beijing, after a senior Chinese diplomat questioned the sovereignty of countries that were once part of the Soviet bloc. In an interview with the French network TF1, Liu, China's ambassador to France, said that from the Chinese point of view, the former Soviet republics do not have a privacy effect in international law as a sovereign state. In international law, even these former Soviet states have no valid status in international law, because there is no international agreement to concretize their status. They are a sovereign country, Liu said in an interview that aired on Friday. His comments drew outrage from the Baltic states, all 3 former Soviet republics and current members of the European Union. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis said the comments by Liu, China's ambassador to France, help explain why the Baltic states do not trust China as a peace broker in Ukraine. Edgars Rinkēvičs, Latvia's foreign minister, said countries will summon Chinese ambassadors in their capitals to protest. In view of the unacceptable statements of the Chinese ambassador to France on international law and national sovereignty, the Latvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has summoned the competent charge of the Chinese embassy in Riga to ask for an explanation next Monday. This step is coordinated with Lithuania and Estonia, Foreign Minister Rinkēvičs said above. He had previously said those remarks were completely unacceptable, and Riga demanded an explanation from the Chinese side and a complete retraction of this statement. The controversy comes ahead of a meeting of European Union foreign ministers in Luxembourg on Monday, at which EU-China relations will be discussed. It also comes at a time when European Union members are divided over whether to continue to rely on China to help end Russia's invasion of Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron has spearheaded efforts to engage China, traveling to Beijing this month to try to convince President Xi Jinping to use his influence over Russian leader Vladimir Putin to end the war. End the war, but those efforts have so far failed. Macron's approach has caused controversy, especially on the eastern flank of the European Union, where capitals are generally more skeptical of Russia and China. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis said, "If someone is still wondering why the Baltic states do not trust China to broker peace in Ukraine, here is a Chinese ambassador who argues that Crimea is theirs. Russia and the borders of our countries have no legal basis." Margus Tsahkna, Estonia's foreign minister, told local media outlet Delfi that, "It is sad that a representative of the People's Republic of China has such a view. That is an incomprehensible point of view." In the same interview, Liu was crooked when asked if Crimea, a Ukrainian territory annexed by Russian forces, was part of Ukraine. "It depends on how you look at it," Liu said. When pressed by journalist Darius Roshbin to answer yes or no. "It's not that simple," Liu said, adding that Crimea belongs to Russia from the very beginning. China officially recognized Ukraine's borders, including Crimea, in December 1994, as part of a denuclearization agreement under which Kyiv gave up the world's third-largest nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees from capitals including Beijing. Last year, in an interview with French broadcaster LCI focusing on the aftermath of former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's controversial visit to Taiwan, Liu said the Taiwanese people need to learn reform because the government in Taipei has stuffed and captivated the people with anti-Chinese stuff. Why do I say rehabilitation learning? Because Taiwan's authorities have implemented an anti-Chinese education program for their people. This has effectively spread and raved about. They have to be re-educated to get rid of anti-Chinese ideology and separatism, said Liu. At the height of the pandemic, Liu was summoned by the French Foreign Ministry after his embassy published a blog post accusing the West of recklessly handling the COVID-19 outbreak, which originated in China itself. He was particularly critical of reports that medical staff in France had let elderly people in nursing homes die. 4. Russia expels German diplomats. Russia announced it would expel German diplomats in retaliation for its own expulsion from Berlin, according to TASS news agency. As a response to the hostile actions of Berlin, the Russian side decided to imitate the expulsion of German diplomats from Russia, as well as significantly limit the maximum number of staff of the diplomatic missions. "Germany is in our country," Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said. A total of 40 people were deported by both sides in April 2022, and Germany has continued to assist Ukraine, including supplying tanks and setting up a repair center in Germany. Maria Zakharova did not disclose the number of German diplomats expelled. Relations between Moscow and Berlin, once Russia's biggest oil and gas customer, have been strained since the invasion. Maria Zakharova said the German ambassador to Moscow was informed of the moves on April 5. 5. The Spanish foreign minister said that Spain will deliver 6 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine in the next few days. José Manuel Alvarez told the German publication Tagesschau that after this will be a second package of 4 more tanks. Earlier, Spain had postponed the delivery. Defense Minister Margarita Robles said that the Leopard 2 tanks would leave the country in the second half of April, while initially deliveries were scheduled to take place just after Easter, April 9. While Spain promised to send at least 10 German-made tanks to Ukraine by 2022, the delivery was delayed due to the poor technical condition of these tanks. These tanks have not been used since the 1990s and need to be repaired and tested for combat readiness. According to U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Ukraine's Defense Liaison Group has delivered more than 230 tanks and 1,550 armored vehicles in just a few short months. According to Austin, Ukraine has also received other equipment and ammunition to support more than 9 new armored brigades. Earlier, Austin said that 9 Western countries have committed to provide more than 150 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. To date, Germany has delivered 18 Leopard 2 tanks, Portugal has delivered 3 and Poland has delivered 14. Britain delivered 14 Challenger 2 tanks. Modern Western tanks could be crucial in Ukraine's spring counterattack. However, critics have pointed out that their partial offering can hinder the effectiveness of their strategy. 6. Intelligence Bulletin of the UK Department of Defence Intelligence. In the latest intelligence report, the UK Department of Defence Intelligence said the following. The Russian state is struggling to maintain consistency in a core narrative it uses to justify the war in Ukraine, that the invasion is similar to the Soviet experience in World War II. On April 18, 2023, Russian state media announced the cancellation of this year's Immortal Regiment's Great Patriotic War memorial marches on the grounds of safety. In fact, the authorities are most likely concerned that the participants will overstate the extent of recent Russian casualties. This comes after the owner of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, publicly questioned whether there were really any Nazis in Ukraine, going against Russia's justification for the war. Authorities have continued their efforts to unify the Russian public around polarizing myths about the 1940s. On April 12, 2023, the state news agency RIA Novosti reported on unconventional documents from the FSB archives, alluding to Nazi responsibility for the murder of 22,000 Polish citizens during the Katyn massacre of 1940. In effect, the FSB's predecessor, the NKVD, was responsible. In 2010, the Russian State Duma officially condemned Joseph Stalin for ordering the murder. 7. Jack Teixeira shared secret intelligence much earlier and to a much larger audience. According to online posts reviewed by the New York Times, Private Jack Teixeira of the U.S. National Air Force is accused of leaking classified defense documents to a small group of gamers, actually posted sensitive information months earlier than the current indictment and to a much larger chat group. In February 2022, shortly after the invasion of Ukraine, a user profile matching that of Jack Teixeira began posting secret intelligence about the Russian war effort to an undisclosed chat group. Previously, there were about 600 members on the Discord social platform, many of which were of Russian origin. The newly discovered information includes details on Russian and Ukrainian casualties, the activities of Moscow's spy agencies, and updates on aid provided to Ukraine. The user claims to have posted information from the National Security Agency, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies. The Pentagon has so far declined to comment on this new New York Times report, but observers say the leaks may have greatly helped the Russians and caused the deaths. The injustice of the Ukrainians. 8. Ukraine uses Palantir software to record war crimes in Russia. Ukraine plans to deploy software from U.S. data analytics provider Palantir Technologies Inc. to help the country prosecute war crimes committed by Russia, the company told Reuters. Palantir, which has provided Ukraine with systems that can help it attack tanks and assist refugees, is now working with the country's Prosecutor General's office to allow investigators across Europe to gathers and processes data. Palantir says the company's software will combine intelligence and satellite imagery to build maps of evidence, such as determining the distance of a Russian device from a crime scene or compiling photos taken by people Ukraine uploaded to social networks. Andriy Kostin, Ukraine's Prosecutor General, said in a statement provided by Palantir, analysis of this amount of evidence is almost impossible without modern information technology solutions. The data Palantir's software will process relates to allegations of murder, rape, torture, and destruction, part of more than 78,000 crimes reported in Ukraine since the Russian invasion more than a year ago. Moscow has denied attacking civilians or committing war crimes. 9. Igor Girkin says Prigozhin should be arrested as bitter feud escalates. Newsweek had a report titled Igor Girkin says Prigozhin should be arrested as bitter feud escalates, meaning Igor Girkin says Prigozhin should be arrested as bitter feud escalates. Igor Girkin once again criticized Yevgeny Prigozhin, founder of the Wagner mercenary group, as the dispute between the two deepened over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Girkin, a former Russian commander who was a frequent critic of Vladimir Putin, his commanders and Prigozhin, condemned the head of the private military company for apparently supporting efforts to prevent war. Prigozhin, whose army is focused on capturing the town of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region, wrote on his Telegram channel this month that Putin should put a definitive end to the invasion and focus on fortifications Moscow's control of the territories captured by the Russians. At the time, however, the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW for short, wrote that Prigozhin might be making a strawman argument and that his overall message was to promote the invasion. Andriy Yusov, a spokesman for Ukraine's military intelligence agency GUR, said Prigozhin's remarks reflect small cracks in the Kremlin about the war and that those rifts will only grow larger. Gherkin has now asked why Russian authorities have not arrested Prigozhin for his calls to freeze war on the front lines. Gherkin called this a move a violation of Russia's territorial integrity and referred to Prigozhin when asked who was responsible for Russia's withdrawal from Kherson, an operation led by former Army General Sergei Surovikin, who has affiliation with Wagner, advocates and oversees. The ISW said on Friday that Gherkin's accusations could be an attempt to discredit his opponent, with whom he had a vendetta. Gherkin's comments may also suggest that Prigozhin has found a sponsor, possibly affiliated with the Russian Ministry of Defense, who advocates a temporary freeze of the war in Ukraine for political reasons, according to Gherkin. American consulting organization. However, a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine would only benefit Russia by allowing it to rebuild its forces and reduce Western support for Ukraine, the ISW said. Moscow would then use the Ukrainian territories it invaded as a springboard for future offensive operations after restoring combat capabilities. Prigozhin recently resumed cooperation with the Russian Defense Ministry after weeks of criticism. ISW said this shows that Prigozhin has reached an agreement with the Russian military command when it proposes to Putin a temporary ceasefire. Gherkin is also known as Strelkov and has repeatedly denounced Prigozhin's campaign to capture Bakhmut. He also accused Wagner of prioritizing his political ambitions, which he said were motivated by a mental illness and detrimental to the common cause of winning Ukraine. He also accused Prigozhin of committing war crimes. Prigozhin responded kindly, writing on his Telegram account that discussing Gherkin was simply indecent. "Why do I have to comment? I don't offend girls," Prigozhin said. Prigozhin has said that Gherkin received an offer to join Wagner's forces but chose instead to sit around and throw poop. Gherkin's latest attack on Prigozhin comes as his newly formed Angry Patriots Club poses 40 questions to Putin, the Kremlin and the Russian military command on a series of criticisms of the Moscow campaign. These include complaints about the Russian withdrawal, the agreement to restart grain shipments and the role of Wagner mercenaries. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry for comment via email. 10. Hundreds of captured Ukrainians have returned from Russian captivity. Some disappeared without a trace. The Ukrainian government is demanding the return of all Ukrainians detained by Russia, a top military official said on Saturday. "If there is at least some hope that these people are still alive, we will ask Russia to return these people to their homes." Bohdan Okremenko, an official with the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War, said the work won't stop until we get everyone home, dead or alive. Speaking at an event in Kiev, Okremenko said about 2,230 Ukrainians have been sent home after being held by Russia since the start of the full-scale invasion. According to Okremenko, about 20% of them have been reported missing. He said there is no confirmation, no evidence, that these people are in captivity, so they are considered missing until found. Ola Kotenko, Ukraine's Commissioner for Missing Persons, said on Saturday. "In times of war, we must do everything we can to ensure that the families of the missing know that the state cares about them." Kotenko said the Commissioner's office is responsible for finding people, analyzing information and communicating with relatives of the missing. The office includes a call center as well as several teams on the ground searching the recently liberated areas.